Welcome to Medieval Grimspire Chronicles. Tonight, we sink into the foulest corners of medieval life where Gong farmers labored knee-deep in human waste by moonlight. A shaft of candlelight shivers at the edge of a yellowed basin, revealing the swirling liquid below the worker within. She stands calf-deep, submerged in the acrid brew of urine and lime, each stomp a muted thunder that ripples through the dusk-filled alley. The air is thick with the scent of wet leather and animal bile, the sour sting of human waste that clings to her lungs. This is her confession, this ritual of foot and fleece, and it begins again at the threshold of night. In this moment, the world narrows to the rhythmic press of wool beneath her soles. The hiss of sulfur rising from each step, the acidity burning into fibrant flesh. Fingers slick with grease, she reaches for her staff, stabilizing against the trough's rim, her breath shallow. Every heartbeat echoes through her chest like the distant clang of a tannery bell, weaving itself into an inevitable melody of labor and sorrow. She is named Elsbeth, though none will mark that name in the ledges of the guild. A peasant woman, bound to contract since spring, now near longing for freedom she cannot name. Her skin is raw with alkali burns, rash, pocked, and chapped, wearing the testament of years spent in caustic water. And yet, she rises with each dawn, feet blistered, ankles yielding. For this is bread and coin. The world's need for cloth to wrap its rulers outweighs all other needs around her. The town breathes its own story. Stone-built tenements loom overhead with darkened windows, their timber framing slick with moss and smoke. Down each alley, loose chutes spill into gutters thick with filth as pigs root through the mud, snouts curling in human excrement, searching for scraps. Rats skitter across slabs of dung-clotted cobbles. Above, a rook of chimney smoke drifts westward, leading only to more of the same. Her fellow laborers murmur of curses in the fleece, the spirits of sheep wronged, of holy cloth sullied by urine, of pacts unspoken. Beware the whispering wool. They say their voices, low tone, reverent, tone, fearful. Only the brave, only the desperate, stand in this vat of alchemy, turning the groan of sheep into cloth fit for kings. She dares not speak of fear, for terror would seem weakness. Yet, terror is her constant companion, tucked into the folds of fleece and festered in the folds of her chest. Each step presses her deeper into the soil of her own shame. She imagines noble shoulders, draped in gowns spun from this very fat pride, clothed in uric acid, audiences cheering beneath banners she cannot touch. She tastes their grandeur in her lungs, a bitter aftershock. Your scent lingers on her hands like guilt, and she wonders, does the cloth carry her shame as surely as it carries its color? Its crow lands on a nearby wall, its black feathers rustling. In criticism, its beady eye regards her accusation or kinship. She cannot tell. She tilts her head, searching the sky for mercy that never comes, only chimney smoke and late-strung laundry flapping against the gray. Up, the world above remains, distant, cloaked in the high stone of castle keeps and church towers. Here below, it stinks of death and deliverance. She recalls her mother's voice before she died. Elsbeth, remember, what you bear is for better days. But the better days retreat, like the tide, leaving salt-stung hope in their wake. Still, she works, driven by that fragile promise. She imagines the moon's gentle hand on her back, a watcher in silver, offering absolution in its pale glow. As twilight bleeds into night, her heart steadies on the moon's pale face, full, unyielding, silent witness to her toil. This procession, her feet, the fleas, become something more. Not just labor, but penance. Not just contract, but prayer. With each stomp, she offers her body, her shame, her rusted hopes into the vat, baptizing cloth at the altar of sacrifice. Elsbeth's lips press together. She inhales deeply, the air tasting of acid and regret. She raises her face to the full moon, and in that gesture makes a vow. The world will not see her scars. They will not know this scent of shame. They will only see cloth born of her confession. And yet, dawn approaches with its own kind of reckoning. As the townsfolk rouse, celebrating the last moon's journey, they will touch the cloth. They will feel its softness, never knowing the fire that forged it in this vat of filth and forgiveness. The crier will call for trades at the market square. The merchants will hawk rich hues and fine grain. And the world will spin on Elsbeth steps from the vat, water dripping from her boots. She moves toward the wooden staircase that leads to her small Havano chimney. No nightly tapestry, only straw and low ceiling. She will sleep beneath the moon's memory, restless, haunted by shame and hope alike. Her hands caress the wool she carried, elastic with life and tension. She smooths the folds as if blessing them, as if blessing herself. Above, the crow lifts off, its wing beat a whisper in the dark. Below, she closes the door behind her, extinguishing the candle, letting the scent of urine settle. In the silence, she listens for redemption. The VAT's echo still resonates deep in her bones, and now, with the first bird call of morning in, the next chapter Elsbeth will follow a ragged caravan to the market. Clutching her confession cloth in a rough sack, she will step into another world of glare and commerce, testing whether her vow can hold in the daylight. The moon withdraws, but its promise lingers, and so does she, poised on the edge of anonymity and revelation. Silence settles, pregnant with possibility, and the world waits for her next step. A single clay bowl, cracked at its rim, sits by the VAT's edge, full as earth caked around its lip. Elsbeth kneels, her hands digging into dry clay, the powder lifting in rivulets as she digs. Between her fingertips, the pale dust holds a promise, a balm for urine's acid, a bridge into clean cloth. Her breath trembles, lungs tasting of ash and regret, as she presses the earth into the folds of fabric, coaxing purity from filth. This is how she begins, not with the familiar plunge, but with the quiet ritual of earth's embrace around her. The medieval town pulses bell towers, tolling across damp rooftops. Merchants loading broadcloth onto carts, children chasing geese through shriveled lanes. Yet here, in the limited circumference of her world, she navigates the intimate boundary between ruin and redemption. Each handful of clay pressed into the wool echoes through her bones. It's a heartbeat of hope buried beneath skin and fabric. Her mind travels back. The arrival of the magistrate, the parchment sealed with wax, the names guilds of fullers, dyers, weavers sworn to uphold quality and maintain sanctity of cloth. Beneath the grand statutes, a harsh reality, without urine, without foot, without fuller's earth. Many cloths decay, fine fibers lose their strength. Elsbeth can almost taste the bitterness of those arguments. Guild brothers debating fees, apprentices learning the chant of clay and water, masters counting coins beside vat and ledger. In the scarred hands of her neighbors, she sees the mark of covenant, each scar a story. One man, stooped from years of treading, carries the bruise of a fallen beam. Another, silent as dusk, presses his hands into water, whispering prayers to Minerva, patroness of craft's hand. To some, only the thin hope that clay might cleanse more than cloth. Elsbeth folds in the clay, smoothing it across virgin fleece, while voices in her head recite the ancient names, tucking, walking, milled clothicals of rituals older than the town walls. She thinks of her mother, once a weaver before illness, claimed her, who taught her that wool carried memory of lamb's warmth, of spring meadows, of flocks beneath open sky. Now, Wool smells of urine, of lime, of guilt. Yet, when clay binds fibers, the material remembers again. Elsbeth's fingers whisper across the fleece. She feels the cloth draw together, threads interlacing like the hands of lovers on a wooden pew, like voices in a choir praying for forgiveness. She dredges the bowl from the edge of the vat, pouring clay into golden liquid. It sinks, pale and silent, stirring the yellow luminescence into milky dusk. She plants her feet in the mixture and begins to stomp. Its press contracts the fibers, bringing strength to weakness. Beneath her, the cloth becomes a womb and altar, cradle and crucible. She imagines those who will drape themselves in this cloth. Nobles crossing the hall, merchants bargaining in the square, children born beneath its warmth. Will they ever sense the mercy pressed into its grain? The clang of a tannery bell sounds mid-morning, calling workers to their next task, merchants to town. For most, this sound heralds production's pulse. For Elsbeth, it strikes the tether of her vow. She pauses, chest tight, listening to the bell's resonance in her bones, feeling the wet cotton press beneath her toes. A ghost of feathers flutters outside her. White dove among black crows landing atop the VAT's rim and pecking gently at clay-painted wool. Its wings stir the air, flinging droplets across her cheek. A dove apiece, fragile amid filth. She kneels, cradling the bird, whispered words of mercy on her lips, the first she's spoken in months. The dove's heart pounds against her palm. Then it lifts, scattering droplets and dust into the vaulted gloom. Elspeth exhales, tasting water, earth, relief. Rising, she drains the vat, dragging cloth from its cradle. The fleece is damp, heavy, cleansed of its former stench. She lays it on the stones, pale and soft, the promise of tomorrow. Beneath that cloth lie the weight of birth, death, poverty, and prayer. Beneath that cloth, she has buried her greatest shame. Behind her, the tannery. Bell tolled again. Today, she is no longer the peasant bound by contract. Today, she is fuller, craftsman, penitent. Between gulping breaths, she tastes both dust and redemption. She wraps the cloth around her shoulders, as if donning armor spun of earth and penance. She does not know what tomorrow will bring. Will the guild accept her labor? Will merchants pay their dues? Will the cloth bear witness to her soul? The bell tolls once more, a heartbeat of time. She lifts her face to the slitted window above, where sunlight filters through panes tinted by soot. Beyond, the world prepares for market. Here, in her hands, she carries the fragile fruit of her labor cloth, born of clay and soul. Her vow lingers. In the damp air, she will follow this cloth beyond these alleys, into midday sunlight, into the market's relentless glare. She will bear her confession at the market stall, and if her work holds, if clay's promise endures, the next chapter awaits in the morning's golden haze. She steps forward, cloth folded like a prayer in her arms. The dove's flight still echoes behind her, skies wide, the world uncertain, and she is ready to walk into both. A gray dawn spills across the market square, where dew-laden cobblestones glint like broken promises. Stalls creak under coarse cloth's broadcloth, surge, kersey draped from wooden frames. Kays stands at the edge of this bustling stage, her confession cloth folded in rough linen, heavy with prayer and earth's odor. She scans the crowd. A pale-faced clothier measures lengths with a bone ruler. Flemish merchants lean across barrels, their speech sharp as shears. Townsfolk gather, eyes narrowing at the damp folds in her arms. She breathes in a world cleansed by sunlight, but stained by avarice. Wool once soft with memory of lambs and meadows now transforms under human hands. Spun, woven, fooled, traded. It carries the weight of guild statutes, the silent oath of foolers who, by the 14th century, had become powerful enough to protect petition mayors and shape commerce. Their lives, like threads, were woven into the city's pulse. Elsbeth moves forward, her fingers brushing the cloth's grain. She recalls the fuller's earth, pale and powdery, sinking into golden vats, a ritual older than any charter. She murmurs a prayer that echoes the medieval gospel, to cleanse, to thicken, to mend human ritual, mirrored in wool and clay. Round her merchants haggle, hands moving like rooks circling prey. Urchins dart between legs, mouths open for scraps. A water-bearer hoists a yoke, buckets sloshing, the rhythm matching her trembling heart. The clothier's apprentice approaches, silk-lined cap twitching. He eyes the cloth's dampness, its subtle slump. "This came from a tannery," he whispers, though no dye clings to it. Shame roots Elsbeth's voice. "Fuller's earth and moonlight," she says softly, invoking both her ritual and the night's promise. She hopes he feels her intention, that beneath the smell, beneath the stain, lies craft born of humility and soil. He nods, not convinced, but summons his master. The clothier, a lean man with steepled brows, drapes the confession cloth on a wooden tinter frame. He touches the fibers his fingers, roughed by thread and coin, pause as if sensing memory. Behind them, a merchant from Flanders counts coins in a weathered pouch. He raises his eyes. This cloth may yet fetch top price abroad. Elsbeth stands bare-armed in the cool dawn. The square hums with the pulse of trade, but for her, the world narrows. Each breath is possibility, each heartbeat a verdict. She exhales and watches the cloth stretch on tenterhooks, the phrase, born of this very wood and metal pulled taut, like confession, awaiting absolution. A sudden gust lifts stray, straw, and paper, blicking around ankles. Elsbeth glances skyward. A flock of crows wheel toward chimney smoke, dark omens above the taming flames of commerce. Below, traders leaning close, whispering, "It's fine cloth, could be broadcloth, heavy, full woolen." The heavy cloth, product of footfalling, of guild strength that rose in this city in the mid-14th century. Time slows. The lean clothier steps away. His apprentice reaches for a knife, slicing a small sliver from the edge. A hush settles. Tilt's throat tightens. The apprentice brings the swatch to his nose, sniffs, then passes it to his master. Their eyes meet hers, dark with conviction. Theirs inscrutable. She flees before the verdict, slipping into a stall-shielded alley. There, she leans against rough-hewn oak, heart thunderous, breath ragged. Beneath her shift, the confession cloth warms, alive against her skin. She thinks of the VAT's acid burn, the earth's cool caress, the moon's witness, the dove's fragile heart, all leading here. Soon, voices erupt, laughter, coins, clinking applause. She dares not look, yet she hears them. 2 shillings the ell. Better. Bring more. Bring more. The price pierces her like a blade and bomb combined. The crowd surges. Cloth stretches, sells, folds, disappears into satchels and carts. Sun climbs. Shadows retreat. Elsbeth steps back into sunlight. The markets roar, painting her skin with heat and possibility. Her confession, transformed, bears a new weight, now measured in coin, commerce, and silent judgment. She watches wagons roll away, laden with their labor, and she realizes the vow she whispered in candlelight, in clay, in moonlight, now travels beyond her, bearing her shame and redemption into the world. As she crosses the square, palms press to her aching back. She senses eyes upon her wives, noting her posture, men guessing her occupation, children curious. She walks away from the tinter frames and stalls, the clamor receding behind her. In her pocket, a silver groat glints, the fruit of confession, of earth, of toil and truth. Ahead looms a road to home, to contract, to the next chapter of her journey. There, her past will shadow her. Guild masters might summon her. Dyers await. Transport caravans bound for Flanders. Expect new cloth. But before all that tells spice pauses at the marketplace's edge. A single crow arcs above, its wing beat, a whisper. You dared to step into the light. I hold fast. She turns, chest tight, eyes forward. Beneath her shift, the confession cloth lies pressed to earth, and stomach proof that what was filth can become offering. That shame can transmute into worth. The road stretches ahead, dusk and dawn entwined. And Elsbeth, fuller of earth and secret prayers, steps into both. A deep, metallic echo resonates through the pre-dawn mist. Wooden hammers rhythmically descend into troughs of sodden fleece. Water beats against beams, soaking through coarse wool, and the hiss of dampness fills the air. In this early hour, the fulling mill awakens, vast and ancient and water-powered cathedral of labor, its wheel churning like a wounded heart. Elsbeth stands at its edge, the confession cloth folded tight in her arms, its fibers still warm with earth and moonlight. She watches as that cloth her offering will now be judged by mill and guild. Not just by sunlit eyes. Inside the mill, massive cams lift hammers fulling stocks that crash down upon the soaking cloth. The process is relentless, unceasing, the scouring and milling of wool into dense, watertight fabric. This is the medieval miracle of power harnessed to water, transforming manual anguish into collective strength. The cascade gathers rhythm, wood, and water, wheel and timbrel, feeding into a hymn of toil. Elsbeth traces the wheel's axle, with her gaze recalling that ancient Latin term, sfulo, the maker of cloth, the purifier of wool. She steps onto the timber platform, heart trembling. The guildmaster, lean and judicious, oversees the mill's breath, eyes alight in torchlit gloom. His robe bears the guild's emblem, a stylized hammer, and speaks of collective covenant. Clothing the city is their creed. Foolers, guilds, he had said, stand as both sanctified and scrutinized. They regulate craft, quality, and even the wage earned by the humblest fooler. The confession cloth lies now among other fleeces, damp and heavy, ready for judgment by hammer and law. Elsbeth places her cloth into the vat. It sinks beneath a pale stream of water in fuller's earth. She recalls the ritual of the clay how. It bound shame to repentance and prays silently that these waters will carry that shame onward, cleanse and transform. Hammers fall. Each strike shrinks and thickens the fibers. Each beat echoes in her chest. This is both crucible and pulpit. The confession cloth endures, condenses, strengthens. Around her, the mill laborers, burly and silent, guide the wool between hammer strikes, testing density with fingers stained ochre. A T. The master nods. The cloth meets guild standard, supple yet stout, a testament to proper folding. He lays a finger on the cloth, gruff approval in a softened gesture. In that touch, Elsbeth feels her vow recognized. Yet, she knows that transformation is never final. The cloth will next journey to the tinter frames, stretched taut by tinter hooks in wide open spaces, where wind and sun will steal moisture and memory. The world beyond the mill awaits. Dyers, finishers, clothiers, but also more judgments. Guildmasters might demand her presence. Merchants may question her coin. Transporters await their commission. The cloth must sing under all scrutiny as the wheel slows and the mill's echo subsides. Elsbeth folds the cloth and steps down from the platform. Damp air clings to her hair, the scent of wet wool and spinning gears clumping in her throat. Outside, the water wheel creaks to a stop, its song finished. The dawn has bled into day, hollow and expectant. She pauses by the sluice gate. Water pooling like remembrance beneath her boots. Shadows flicker across mossy stones. The guildmaster stands quiet, hands clasped. He nods again. She readies a curt by in gratitude, in pride, and in cautious relief in her arms. The confession cloth lies heavier now, no longer raw shame, but hardened promise. She lifts it to the first stream of sunlight, watching motes dance through damp fibers. Clouds drift overhead, sheep-like and slow, and her eyes track their passage into the sky. Her next steps will carry her to the tinter grounds, where cloth is pulled taut on hooks and stretched toward shade pan, where sun and wind and city air will finish their work. There, she must stand again, visible not hidden among vats, nor submerged in VAT's coarse anonymity. She must meet the glare of merchants, the critique of dyers, the moral gaze of townsfolk who see not blood, but bore cloth. A single crow circles above the wheel, caws, low and grave, then veers westward. Elspeth follows its flight with a quiet heart, knowing that beyond this day lies another test. The tenter frames, the drying yards, the open world, and beyond that the guild trial, her freedom's price. It's a final reckoning. She steps away from the mill, the waters whisper and wheels rumble, fading behind her. In front lies the open yard, the next stage of revelation. She holds her breath. Destiny awaits, stretched taut as the cloth she bears. A hush settles over the tenter ground as dawn's first breath caresses wet cloth. Rows of taut wool shimmer like ghostly sails on wooden frames, each edge pierced by iron hooks that bind wet confession to structure. The air tastes of mist and fresh linen, but beneath, the memory of urine and clay lingers, as if the earth herself cannot forget. Elspeth steps into this cathedral of stretched cloth, tidal and silent, each ripple trembling in pale morning light. This is the Tentor Grounza, yard where cloth breathes under sun and wind, healing from acid and baptism in earth's dust. Each tenter frame is nailed across its perimeter with slender, bent nails, tenter hooks that clamp fabric firm, holding shape while moisture flees, locking in the weft and warp. The phrase on tenter hooks, once literal, speaks now of suspense and transformation. Here, the cloth strains between labor and release. Elspeth moves among the frames, fingertips grazing damp wall. Her confession cloth marks no truer. Stretched out, cake gleams soft and smooth, its fibers knitted tight by hammers and earth. But there remains the faint arc of shame pressed into its grain. She recalls the first hiss of lime in the vat, the fulling mills crash and churn, the water wheels spinning him. All that remains now is waiting for drying, for proof, for worth. She hears the soft chorus of tenters, wood settling, cloth inhaling, wind threading through hooks. Birds stir in nearby trees. Clothier's apprentice brushes by, clipboard in hand, eyes narrowing as Elspeth's cloth catches his gaze. She holds herself still, heart a drum in its catches. He glides a finger over the fibers. He tests for shrink, neatness, breadth. In this moment, her vow stands between the ammonia of her past and daylight scrutiny. She closes her eyes, feeling the wind's fingers teasing the cloth. She feels fear crack her ribs, fear of failure, of shame unbound, of judgment. The tenterhooks hold the fabric in place, but can they hold her courage? She exhales, tasting rain and sky. She remembers guild law. Fooling must shrink cloth to precise length and width, no more, no less. Guild masters patrol these yards, measuring, marking, condemning. Her confession cloth is measured in ells, its fate stitched into the guild's covenant, or its cost coin, scars, even contract. The tenter ground is both stage and trial hall. A distant bell tolls the sound, heavy and lonesome. The apprentice steps back, his scribbles done. He nods curtly at Elspeth. She opens her eyes. Her cloth remains taut, whole, despite the stretched tension. It awaits sun's final song. She walks the yard's perimeter, past white and gray cloths, each staked and straining. She notes patchwork repairs, homespun rags, repurposed, survival woven into seams. Each cloth tells a story of cold and warmth, of seasons and sorrow, of human hands shaping survival. Hers is woven in shame's shadow, but also punishment's promise to make from ruin a mantle. A crow circles overhead, its cry hollow, reverent. It lands upon the wooden edge of a tenterhooks poised below. Elsbeth hears the bird's heart against afternoon sky, heartbeat in open space. It sings a single note before lifting into drifting smoke. She turns toward home, her arms empty, but chest full with waiting. She leaves the confession cloth where it stretches, breathing its final quiet breaths. She steps away, following a narrow track bathed in sawdust and dried clay. Each footstep echoes forgiveness. Ahead lies the guild chamber, where cloths are judged, contracts renewed, futures bartered. Will they accept her work? Will her confession cloths silence suffice? Will shame cling or fall away? The yard behind her hums in the wind. The tenterhooks hold firm, and Elsbeth, fuller of earth and secret prayers, steps into judgments shade woven between craft and covenant. Her promise stretched taut as the cloth behind her. Her next step leads into the hall of guildsmen, where coin and conscience intersect, and where Elsbeth must claim her right to labor and to be more than her shame. The hall is vast, vaulted in ancient oak beams, shadowed by torchlight. A long table draped in deep velvet runs its length. Around it sit figures in robes, faces stern beneath hoods. They are the masters of the Fuller's Guild, guardians of craft, law, and legacy, assembled today to judge Elsbeth and her confession cloth. Silence lies thick as stone, broken only by a single drip of water from a damp cloak. Elsbeth stands before them, palms pressed hard to her sides, heart a cage of thorns. The confession cloth lies folded on the table, pale and still, its fibers holding memory in every thread. She remembers the basin of urine, the squeeze of clay, the plunge into the mill, the taut pull of tenterhook sand. Now, her confession must lie naked in daylight among these arbiters of reputation and craft. Guilds in this age are monoliths of tradition and temporal power. Born in the 12th century, Fuller's guilds have woven themselves into the fabric of towns, setting standards, protecting members from outsiders and speculators, regulating trade, wages, apprenticeships, as surely as any court or covenant. They enforce rules with ceremonies and sanctions, fines, expulsions, even punishment. Every guild member swears oaths. Every apprentice is bound by indenture. Every cloth must meet their laws. A master speaks first, voice low but unyielding. You are not of our order. You have bypassed contract. His words echo with accusation and echo across polished wood. Elsbeth inhales, tasting the musk of hemp rope and incense. She lifts her chin, trembling. I stand by my labor, she whispers, voice small as a sparrow's heartbeat. I endured the bath, the mill, the tenter. This cloth has been measured by guild and sun. It carries neither rot nor defect. From the back, another master-lean woman, scarred by years of labor and prayer, leans forward. Then let it be tested. A faint echo drifts from the bell outside. The cloth is unwrapped, passed down the line. Scrutiny is silent, but alive the scratch of fingernails, the tension of brows, the glow of torchlight on damp fibers. Elsbeth watches as they test shrink and resilience, fold and press. Guild law demands precision. Cloth must shrink by exact measure, hold underwater test, display no residual impurity. In medieval England, records note master fullers testing every piece, verifying it against guild standards. Each test is both technical and ritual, a public display of purity, competence, trust. Dread pools in Elsbeth's chest. She senses shadows gather around her coals of the vat. The mill's hammer, the tenterhooks stretch. She sees her own reflection in polished wood, soot-streaked face, damp hair, eyes heavy with confession. She is not noble. She bears no letter of contract. She carries only her labor, her shame, her silent vow. A second bell tolls. The masters confer in hushed Latin words, old as guild stones. Their hands hover, gesture, rest on ledger-bound scales. When the verdict is given, the lead master speaks again. It meets our standards. The fiber is sound, the weight correct, the color and fullness acceptable. He pauses, as though weighing mercy. But you are not of our number. You bypassed our oversight. Elsbeth's throat is stones. She bows deeply. The work speaks for me. My labor is my contract. She murmurs. A hush, as if the torches themselves hold breath. Then the lean female master stands. Let the guild admit you as bonded fuller's servant. She may continue under probation, but must swear the guild's oath and labor under a master for 1 year. In that moment, the air alters. Pride flickers. In Elsbeth's chest, like a candle struck damp no longer. Her confession, once a secret burden, becomes passage-lined with risk, enshrined in vow. She nods, voice low but steady. I accept. The masters nod. Robes rustle. The table slides open. A guild clerk unfurls a parchment, sealed with wax, and Elsbeth steps forward, dipping her hands into an inkpot. Each drop stains her palm. Each letter is her mark before the guild and God. The pen scratches. It is a confession and a covenant, a condemnation and a promise. Within the stroke of script, she is changed. When ink dries, a master presses a palm over the seal. The hall exhales. Torches glow softer. Speth gathers the confession cloth in her arms. It is both cloak and crucible. Shame turned into covenant. Illness into craft. Filth into value. She stands bound now not by contract of vault and alley, but by the guild's oath, visible to future eyes. Ahead waits the dyed vats, the merchant's commerce, a road far from anonymity. But tonight, beneath vaulted oak, Elsbeth is no longer invisible. She is fuller, servant, and bonded. She is witness and guardian. She is part of something larger than herself. The gate will open at dawn to another world of scrutiny and light. The masters file past her. The torchbearers release a flicker of wind across velvet drapes. A final bell tolls quiet, resolute, calling them to guild feast tomorrow. Prayers for saints and guild brethren. Ritual, community, legacy. Elsbeth's fingers tighten around cloth. In its grain, she hears the hammering of hammers at the mill, the hiss of clay and vat, the rasp of tenterhooks at sunrise. She breathes, tasting vow and dust. The tapestry of her life has changed, woven now with guild law and oath-bound honesty. She steps out into the chill night, the hall's torchlight behind her, the bell's resonance echoing in her bones. Tomorrow, she will step into Dai's cauldron, the next trial. But tonight, the guild has named her. She is bound. Hand her confession cloth. Wrought in filth and faith, carries her forward into color, commerce and uncertain hope. A low, copper-stained flame shivers across a huge earthen vat as dawn awakens the Dai house, heat and steam coiling upward like incense. Elsbeth enters, her heart both heavy and light, clutching her confession cloth folded in linen. Sunlight, filtered through soot-darkened windows, falls in spectral slants across rows of boiling vessels. Each vat murmurs, red, blue, yellow, the potential of color stirred into liquid breath. This is the crucible of revelation. She sets the cloth before the master dyer, whose robe is scored with faint hues, a memory of past creations. He kneels and lifts her confession cloth. its fibers pulsing beneath stained fingers. She feels the weight of her journey, the vat of urine, the fulling mill's thunder, tenterhooks, tension, and now the final transmutation into color. The guild's eyes follow every fold. The first vat simmers with woad blue, the slow brewed liquid from fermented leaves of Acides tinctoria, cultivated along Somerset and Lincolnshire fields for centuries. The master dips a swatch. Tea emerges, pale jade, and is plunged again, deeper and deeper, until the cloth breathes indigo, heavy as twilight. Elsbeth's throat tightens. This blue carries history, Charlemagne's decree to grow woad, church vestments, and peasant cloaks born of the same plant. Then comes the red, madder root, fierce and clotted, bruised by boiling water. Cloth primordinant, in alum and iron sulfate, drains the red like memory into soil. This process, mixing alum, tartar, and red dye, was refined across early modern Europe to yield brunette blacks and colors that rivaled royal purple. Elsbeth remembers the guild's words. Master dyers may use fast dyes. Others are restricted. She swallows. Her confession cloth must earn its place among the fast dyes. She watches as acid swirls. Dye coaxes strain. Fiber yields tone. The vat smells of simmering earth and leaves, resin and metal alchemy of nature distilled by human hands. The master lifts the cloth again. Colors peek through damp folds. Emerald gold when over-dipped into yellow weld, later russet and ochre, threaded into fingerholds. Behind her, apprentices scrape dye skins, measure heat, test pH. Their voices echo in ritual. Dyeing is not decoration, is covenant, ritual, science. Guild laws dictate every step, from solvent and mordant to duration. Alum brightens reds, iron darkens. Lack of mordant ruins hue. Faithless cloth is condemned. Each vat is another trial. Finally, the cloth is rinsed in cold water, squeezed by trembling fingers, hung within the shaded house to cradle its drying. Elsbeth presses her palm to its rich grain color, now bound into fiber, memory looped into hue. She hears distant bells. Another guild trial concluded. Another day's rite begun. Outside, smoke drifts across cobbles, carrying scents of tar, bread, animal hides. The dyed confession cloth hangs before her, a tapestry of shame folded in two. Worth it whispers. From filth came fiber. From sorrow came strength. From anonymity came recognition. The guild master steps beside her. It holds, he says softly. She looks up, voice caught. He nods, color sealed, guild authorized. She is no longer shame-shrouded, but oath-woven. She is Fuller, bonded dyers, affiliate, bearer of covenant woven in loom of law and craft. A crow arcs by the window wings, spread wide against pale sky. Elsbeth follows its flight. She feels new dawn in her chest. The confession cloth clothes its fibers alive with red and blue, swoo with smoke and story. She turns to leave, cloth draped around her shoulders like mantle. Ahead lies the merchant's fair, the trading road, the distant ports carrying dyed wool to Flanders and beyond. There she must walk in color, in scrutiny, in purpose. But tonight, she carries more than pigment. She carries her confession, refined into craftsmanship. The dye house door closes behind her. A key, flame flickers through its gap, as if burning question, what becomes of shame when stained by color? A cue. Next step awaits beyond the road. The merchant's ledger, the sea air, is a promise that what was once unbearable may now be coveted. Then, that Elsbeth, spool of earth and dyed confession, will walk into both. A chill breeze drifts through the open doors of Bruges' Grand Cloth Hall, scattering a handful of loose husks across the polished stone floor. The tall, Gothic arches and towering belfry loom overhead, silent witnesses to 2 centuries of commerce and confession. Daylight filters through stained glass panes, casting jewel-toned splashes upon rows of golden brown wool, washed, fulled, dyed, and now laid bare for the world. Elsbeth stands at the threshold, confession cloth folded in her arms, its hue, rich, born, and refined, dyed inside. Merchants in velvet caps and cloth-coated porridge-colored tunics lean across trestle tables. They inspect each fold, test grasp, sniff for scent ritual honed by decades of butcher's hall rigor and guild law. Bruges is the epicenter of the Flemish cloth trade, its port and squares sustaining an empire of wool stretching from English pastures to eastern trade routes. Now, her cloth must meet the measure of that empire. She recalls the Champagne fairs, crossroads of commerce where Italian bankers and northern clothiers met, forging bills of exchange as currency and covenant. Wikipedia. Here, in this hall, cross-border trade hums beneath her feet. Voices shaped by hand-sciatic merchants whose contour stands not far beyond guardians of maritime rights and middle routes. Every coin clinked across the plank table echoes the path, from English sheepraw and wild to dyed confession cloths, stiff with promise and risk. Elbeth steps forward, breath steady. A cloth merchant from Ghent pulls aside a curtain and beckons. He runs a thumb along her cloths, warps solid in weight, smooth in finish. His eyes narrow, his lips part, then curve. He gestures to an awaiting scribe. Elsbeth feels the world tilt her work becoming currency, her shame now capital. She watches ink flow across parchment, quality assured, price agreed, contract sealed. A hush falls as a Flemish banker leans in matte black robes, old blue, cuff touching the cloth. Gently, he nods. The contracts circulate, one to the merchant, one to the guild overseer, one to her, sealing her confession in law. Bruges becomes ledger and stage, a platform market echoing Champagne Fair's legacy. Outside, wagons wait, dash oxen, dash plow, dash shod. Linen-wrapped loads piled high in carts bound for Cologne, Paris, Cologne, Florence. The cloth will travel canals and rivers, braving tolls and tides, until its fibers touch distant shoulders. Each loop of the wagon's wheel draws out promise and fear. Will the merchant hail its color as fast dye worthy of nobility? Will dyers and fullers in other towns whisper of its origin, its strange maker? Elsbeth releases her breath as she hands over the final scroll. She stands back, shadowed by the hall's towering walls. Round her, the bustle flares bells, barter, footsteps, foreign tongues. She is no longer bound to basins of waste, nor hidden between hammers and tenterhooks. Now she is seen, a crow perch on the belfry, its cry swallowed by the clang of the hall's bell. It calls again, a note of farewell and sentinel. Elsbeth glances up. Crow lingers for a heartbeat. She feels the weight of witness pass between. Then the bird takes wing, lifting into smoke-wreathed sky. She steps forward toward the waiting road, scarred but sure. The confession cloth is gone, woven into contracts, exchanged for coin. Behind her, the cloth hall's doors close with ancient finality. Head, wagons roll, canals ripple, ships wait, downriver. Her path leads toward Antwerp, London, perhaps. Lie in further trials in distant fairs. But tonight, she carries only herself in memory. The hiss of vats, the mill's hammer, the tenterhook's strain, the guild's oath, the dye's alchemy, in the hushed moment when a merchant recognized her craft. She walks toward tomorrow, stepping into a wider world woven threads, tracing her journey across kingdoms and seas. She pauses at the edge of the hall's threshold. 8. Damp cobbles press against her boots. The air tastes of salt and commerce, of rain yet to come. She turns, tracing the outline of the hall's vaulted silhouette against dusk. Then she looks away, following the road glimmering toward distant lights and promises. She walks on confession behind her, covenant before her dot, and so the cloth travels on. And so Elsbeth travels to win, to trade's murmur, into courtly cloaks, into history's unfolding tapestry. Dusk falls over the canal's limp street just outside the cloth hall. A lantern's glow quivers in the breeze. Dust motes dancing like wisps of memory. Elsbeth walks alone, the cobbles smooth beneath her boots, the echo of medieval commerce fading with each step. She has left behind the grand hall, its arches and belfry that once loomed as both altar and tribunal. Bruges's cloth hall, the beating heart of Flemish wool commerce in the 13th and 14th centuries, now recedes into memory. Its legacy of wealth and power, built on wool, guild law, and ritual, still visible in its Gothic silhouette. Ahead, the road forks. One path leads inland towards dairies and weavers. Another leads towards Zeebrugge, the newly deepened port that pulses with the promise of sea wind and foreign tongues. Elsbeth pauses, the night chill catching at the edge of her cloak. The confession cloth no longer in her arms, but woven in two. Contracts sold to a Ghent merchant and destined for distant stands. She carries now only herself in the scars both of labor and pride that speak louder than any woven tape or linen tag. The power of guilds, once alien to her peasant eyes, now pulses within her. These associations, formed by oath and maintained by strict oversights, have shaped her life, her labor, and now her legacy. The guild's law is a covenant, binding her not just to craft, but to community. A community that once might have spurned her, now has accepted her as bonded servant. She walks among guild houses, silent stone witnesses, 2 centuries of regulated craft. Shaped by mercantile ambition and spiritual discipline, a crow's harsh cry splinters the night. It flutters off into smoke-dark sky, trailing its shadow into the bell tower's silhouette. Kilts, her head upward, its flight both farewell and benediction. She has walked through smoke, clay, hammer, oath, and die. She has stepped in darkness and in light. Now she steps toward the horizon. Beneath her feet, the once bustling cloth trade spills over into canal boats and sea-bound wagons. Bruges, once the dominant center, will soon feel the tides shifting toward Antwerp as silk chokes channels and commerce decamps. But the cloth endures, woven by hands that know both shame and hope. Elsbeth's journey endures too. She breathes deeply, tasting salt on the wind, feeling the night's hush deepen. Tomorrow, she will join a caravan bound for Zeebrugge. There, the cloth will meet tides with their own contract, their own reckoning. Will the confession cloth, or at least the work it represents, hold against ocean, salt, and merchant demand? Will its story travel beyond confession? The lantern guttering behind her casts one last glow upon her boots, the cobbles, the silent hall. Then the light dims, only the road remains. She walks on dot, and in the silence, the crow's echo lingers, an omen, a companion, a witness. A lone lantern sways in the mist of dawn as Elsbeth steps onto the quay at Zeebrugge, the memory of Bruges's old cloth hall still pressing against her chest. The harbor mists coil around stacked crates and sailing ships, the cries of gulls mournful and curious. Each sob of water against hull and pier carries promise and peril. She breathes deeply, letting the brine sweep through her lungs, cleansing and sharp, as if the sea itself demands truth at this final threshold. The confession cloth is consoled into contracts and carried off by wagons bound for Flanders merchants. But now, Elsbeth carries something deeper, the echo of guild halls, the taste of dye vats, the sting of fuller's earth. She carries the weight of her vow that humble labor could birth dignity and art in a world ruled by nobility and guild law. Her steps take her along the cobbled wharf toward a small merchant brigantine. Sails hang slack in the gray dawn, anticipation silent on deck. The ship's master weathered wary waits her. He inspects her, noting the stains of labor on her hands, the strength in her stance. He nods, initiating the final phase of her path. Passage across the North Sea, a voyage as much spiritual as mercantile. It is her reckoning, whether confession, covenant, and craft will endure the salty wind and stranger's touch. A gull circles overhead, cries echoing like voices from the maiden voyage of trade caravans that once threaded between champagne fairs and Hanseatic counters. Bruges' ascent, built on the Zuin Inlet in its burrs, founded in 1285, will soon be overshadowed by the rising port of Antwerp as trade shifts with silted channels and changing fortunes. They follow waterways as much as human ambition. Elsbeth sets foot aboard. The deck shifts beneath her and the sea's edge pulls away. She steadies herself, heart hammered by memory. The basin of urine, the mills roar, the guild's torchlit verdict, the vats alchemy. She sees these not as burdens but as beacons marking her passage. Each step toward the railing, toward the rising bow, brings her closer to the unknown. The ship groans, sailcloth snaps. A quiet prayer curls through her throat, that this craft, wrought in darkness and light, will hold fast. The sea may dilute its colors, the deep-sea merchants may question its origin. Yet, she believes that, woven into each fiber, lies a story stronger than any gale. The brigantine slips from the quay. Behind, Zeebrugge's lights shrink into mist. Ahead, gray waves rise and fall, promising distant cities and fresh scrutiny. Antwerp glimmers on the horizon, the next chapter of commerce, of judgment, of belonging. Guilds and markets may shift. Tides may rise and erode, but the cloth and the woman who shaped it tender, above a single gull, takes flight into dawn's faint blush. Elspeth watches it until it blends into sky and sea. She inhales salt and freedom, bracing for wind and wave and world. The confession cloth may be out of her sight, but it remains woven into her blood, her belief, her journey. Beyond lies Antwerp's talks, Turkish looms, English fairs, and emergent ledgers, scribbling its destiny. Yet tonight, she rests in her own bones, rooted in memory, rising toward what comes. This is her passage pea and filth. Baptized in earth, bound by guild, born anew in color and covenant, and now carried over water into the vast age of the West. Thank you for journeying with Elspeth from vat to vessel, from shame to covenant. If this voyage through medieval hearts and hands moved you, please like the video and subscribe for more cinematic stories from the forgotten corners of history. Your support helps us bring these voices back to life. Until next time, walk in their footsteps wherever they may lead.